All characters and events described in this story are fictitious. Any similarities with real people or situations are purely coincidental. Please do not judge strictly. Every author was once a beginner. Write in the comments what city you are from and where you listen to this audio version. Before you dive into this story, I want to ask you one thing. Don't rush to judge. Don't draw conclusions until you hear everything. After all, when we look from the outside, it is so easy to say, I would have acted differently, I would have left immediately, I would not have forgiven. But believe me, when your own life collapses, when the pain digs not into the book hero, but into your chest, everything looks completely different. This story is about betrayal, but first of all about the person, about the husband who loved, who was betrayed, and who went through hell before he could breathe freely again. This story is not about weakness or self-pity. This is a story about choice, about how easy it is to destroy and how difficult it is to put yourself back together again. Thanks for listening. Sincerely yours, Man Rebuilt. I always believed that I had everything a man could dream of by the age of 45. Your own home in Portland, although not luxurious, is warm, strong, and cozy. Respect at work, after all, I have been working as an architect for more than 20 years, specializing in private projects and cottages for middle-income families. And of course, my wife, Laura. We got married 15 years ago, when I was just starting my career. We were both young then, full of hope and courage. Laura worked as an event organizer for small companies' presentations, conferences, parties. Gradually, her ambitions and talent grew. She liked movement, communication, creating bright shows. She was in her element as she rushed around with folders and folders, guest lists, and party plans. I've always been a little jealous of her inner fire because I myself am calmer. My job is design. I sit over drawings and models, pore over design concepts. But Laura seemed to like my more sedate beginning. We complemented each other like two puzzles that fit perfectly despite the cut edges. That Monday, when it all started, I woke up earlier than usual. It was about 6 in the morning, and I felt the gray light of a winter morning breaking through the window. It's often rainy in Portland this time of year, but on this particular day, the sun was trying to break through the clouds. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at Laura. She was fast asleep, tucked under the covers, her hair scattered across the pillow. When you look at a sleeping person, a special tenderness appears in your soul. It seems that in front of you is his true essence, without masks and pretense. However, when I looked at her that time, something suddenly sank in my chest. It was as if some disturbing shadow ran across the room, making me feel a vague uneasiness. I couldn't explain it in any way. Probably just the morning mood, or the feeling that Laura has become a little distant lately. I chalked it up to fatigue and work stress as her agency was preparing for another major food festival in Florida. Trying not to wake Laura, I quietly stood up and left the bedroom. I went into the kitchen, turned on the coffee maker, and took out from the cabinet my favorite mug with the inscription, "Best Husband Ever," which Laura gave me for 10 years of marriage. I remember we then went to a small town on the coast to celebrate the anniversary. We spent 3 days in a hotel overlooking the ocean, walked along the beach, ate ice cream, and sunbathed. It was so warm and calm in my soul. Since then, that mug has become for me a kind of symbol of our family. While the coffee was preparing, I absent-mindedly looked out the window. A nasty fine rain was drizzling, but still the dawn was timidly glimmering behind the clouds. I started going over my plans for the week in my head. I had to prepare a couple of projects for clients from Seattle. Then I had to inspect a house under construction in one of the suburbs of Portland. And of course, it was necessary to help Laura get ready for her trip to Miami. The festival, for which she had been preparing for almost 6 months, was supposed to be an important stage for her career. Organizing a major gastronomic and wine event, the participation of several famous chefs from all over the country, partners from large corporations, potential sponsors, all this is a serious challenge. I was proud of her, although I didn't show it too clearly. Laura woke up about 30 minutes later. I heard the bathroom door slam. She came out into the kitchen in my old sweater, which was hanging like a bag on her, but she loved to wear it. There was a certain stiffness in her movements, as if she was not fully awake. I poured her coffee and asked how she slept. So, she replied, cupping the mug with her palms. I've been having some disturbing dreams lately. I see planes, wind, crowds of people all the time. She fell silent, and in her eyes I noticed an echo of anxiety. Probably nervous before the festival, I thought. But I decided to clarify anyway. Are you worried about the festival now? I understand that a lot is on your shoulders. This is a really big step. Laura shrugged and looked down. Maybe I'm just really afraid of ruining everything. There will be people there that I could only dream of before. Well, you know Kyle Hendricks, Mandy Lopez, all those big names from cooking shows. She looked at me, and a small smile flashed on her face. But you know me, I can handle it. Of course you can handle it, I confirmed. You're doing great. If you need anything help, advice, just to talk, I'm always there. Thank you, Laura said quietly, and her voice truly sounded sincere gratitude. By the way, what about that house we wanted to see? I'll be back in a week. Will it be possible to go there? Then it was as if I woke up from a heavy sleep. We actually planned to move to a more spacious house with a larger plot to get a dog, and perhaps, in the future, invite our parents to live closer. I almost forgot about this. It's like there's been too much going on in my life lately. Of course, I answered, trying to hide my slight surprise. I'll check with the realtor and arrange a viewing. When you get back, we'll go together. She nodded and took a sip of coffee. Everything looked normal, but that strange feeling that arose in the morning did not disappear. There was something in her gestures, in her voice, in the way she avoided looking me straight in the eyes that I could not understand. We spent the rest of the day in our usual routine. She worked from home, I went to the office. After lunch, I stopped by the hardware store to pick up a couple of tools for future projects. On the way home, I thought about Laura. She seems really nervous. We need to support her. Maybe we should have a little romantic dinner. I decided that I would cook something special tonight. After all, she will be leaving soon for a week. We need to spend time together. When I returned home, I found her with a laptop on her lap. She corresponded by mail or chat and looked worried. When I appeared, she immediately slammed the lid of the laptop, which alarmed me a little. She usually didn't do that. "How are you?" I asked, putting the groceries on the kitchen table. "Yes, okay," she did not answer right away, as if distracted from some thoughts. "There are just a lot of organizational issues. Chefs, contractors write to me, everyone has questions. Nothing special. It's clear," I thought. "Maybe we could have dinner tonight. I'll make pasta. I have a recipe with salmon and cream sauce." "Oh, that sounds delicious. But, I still have a video conference today at 9 in the evening. We still have to prepare, so maybe tomorrow will be better." She got up from the sofa and walked towards me, hugging me around the waist. I smelled the aroma of her perfume, a little harsh, but pleasant. She usually used it for going out parties, events. But now it was an ordinary weekday, and I was slightly puzzled. "Tomorrow?" I asked again. "But tomorrow I work until late. I have a meeting at a facility in the suburbs." "We'll figure something out," she said, and there was some kind of pattern in her voice, as if she didn't want to go into details. "Don't be offended, okay?" "Okay, no problem." I kissed the top of her head. "If it's later, knock, I'll be in the kitchen." She smiled and returned to the living room. I began to sort through the packages. Meat, vegetables, a bottle of red wine. I thought we would have a pleasant evening. But something went wrong. I didn't want to put pressure on her, but I felt like there was a tense line between us that neither she nor I dared to cross. In the evening, when it was time for dinner, Laura still did not leave the living room. I looked in and saw that she was talking on a video call with one of her colleagues. The curtain on the camera was open, and I caught a glimpse on the screen of a smiling man of about 30 wearing a white chef's jacket. Apparently, the chef is one of those going to Miami. I didn't interfere, I just briefly waved my hand at her, and she responded with some kind of tense nod. "Okay, let him communicate," I thought, and went to my office. The next day, Laura left early in the morning. in a hurry because her flight was scheduled for 8:30. I offered to take her to the airport, but she said she would rather take a taxi so that I would stay on schedule. It pricked me a little because we usually went to the airport together, always, but I didn't argue. I knew how worried she was. The morning after she left, I felt an emptiness in the house. Sometimes I felt like the silence was pressing on me. But I decided to get down to work and occupy my head with technical drawings because there was little time left. Everything had to be finished by the end of the week. Contact with Laura in Miami was established only late in the evening. I called her around 10 to see if everything was okay. I heard voices buzzing around me, someone laughing, loud music playing. Laura said that they had already arrived at the festival, preparations were underway, there was a lot of fuss. "Look there, don't get too tired," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "And don't forget about food, otherwise in a stressful environment you often skip meals." "Yes, yes," she answered indistinctly, because, apparently, she was covering the receiver with her hand. "I'm just talking here with—" She held her breath, as if trying to remember who exactly was nearby. "With colleagues. Don't worry, everything is fine. Okay? I love you," I added automatically, as I always did. "Me too," she answered quickly and hung up. At that moment, I felt that her voice was somehow different, ringing, excited. Well, yes, she really always loved the atmosphere of big events. Maybe it's just adrenaline rushing to your head, especially on such a scale. Every day in Miami, she called less and less often. When I tried to call, she didn't always pick up. I usually wrote short messages in the spirit of, "Sorry, busy, I'll call you back," but I didn't call back right away. I once joked in another voice, "I hope you don't have a culinary orgy there at night." But in response, there was only an audio read receipt. No emoticons, no comments. It became a little offensive. And this feeling was fueled by an incomprehensible jealousy. I knew that next to her, there were a lot of talented and famous chefs, all so charismatic and artistic. Maybe I was fooling myself, but she clearly liked this environment. One night, I had a bad dream. I was standing on the ocean shore. I saw Laura in a crowd of people waving to me. But between us, a tall man in a white chef's uniform appears from somewhere and blocks my view. He puts his arm around her shoulders, and they laugh, and I scream, but my voice is drowned in the roar of the surf. When I woke up, I felt a spasm in my throat. What nonsense. I tried to calm down, but my heart was pounding, and I couldn't fall asleep again. I tried to get rid of these anxious thoughts. I attributed everything to the fact that I was simply lonely and unusual without my wife. And it's true, before that we almost never parted for a long time. Usually, if there were business trips, they were short and not so intense. But something told me that it was not just my loneliness. A few days later, Laura posted photos from the festival on social media. There were pictures of the stage, elegant tables, bouquets of exotic fruits, and also photographs with different chefs. Among them, I noticed a young guy with a bushy beard and a cheeky smile. He looked at the camera as if he was posing for a glossy magazine. In the background, I recognized Laura. She was standing a little further away, smiling. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. The photo looked completely harmless, just a work moment. But for some reason, it was this photo that touched me the most. In the evening, I tried to call again. This time, Laura answered. "Hi," she said over the increased noise. "Sorry, we have another presentation here. We'll finish soon, then rest. What do you have?" "Nothing special, I miss you." "Everything is fine?" "Yes, everything is fine." Her voice sounded excited, but I couldn't understand whether it was good excitement or something else. Just a bunch of people, everyone is making noise, talking, laughing. Miami is an absolutely amazing place. The weather is gorgeous, we already have spring sun. Glad to hear. I saw the photos, they are cool. Who is this guy next to you, so fair-haired and dashing? Oh, this is Kyle Hendricks, chef from New York. Golden boy, all the girls squeal with delight. But you know, he really is very talented. He was invited as a special guest. He will soon have his own cooking show on one of the popular channels. He and I have already crossed paths a couple of times at other events. She said all this very calmly, as if she were talking about a star who flashes on television and has nothing to do with her. But at the same time, the unpleasant feeling in my stomach did not disappear, as if I was slightly twisted from the inside. All the girls are squealing with delight, echoed in my head. I forced out my indifference. Clear. Okay, I won't distract you. I just wanted to hear your voice. Good luck there. Thank you. I kiss you, she replied, and we disconnected. I threw the phone on the sofa and threw my head back. I looked at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster. There is, of course, nothing like that. She works. She has serious business there, some kind of incendiary events. Yes, there is Kyle, the charismatic chef, but I'm not a child to immediately suspect the worst. We are adults, and Laura is not one to easily have affairs on the side. I believe her. We have been together for 15 years. However, I did not convince myself. A vague anxiety burned inside. Perhaps because Laura's tone in the conversation was somehow new and unfamiliar. I didn't hear the usual homely warmth in it. I felt that she was there in Miami, living a completely different life, a life in which I was simply not there. In the following days, we hardly spoke on the phone. She sent short reports via Messenger. Today, we met with possible sponsors. Everything was great. We had dinner with a group of chefs. It was a lot of fun. Tomorrow is the last presentation, then I'll return home. I read these messages and tried not to stress myself out. Although once, when she wrote, "We had a cool after-party on a yacht, people were delighted." I imagined her dancing somewhere on the deck under the stars and the sound of the waves, and next to her was this Kyle or someone else, joking with her, laughing. And I felt uneasy, as if I was behind a glass wall, a dull scream with no way to get through. But I gritted my teeth and decided, okay, she will come and we will talk calmly. I won't draw any harsh conclusions. Laura returned from Miami late Tuesday evening. At first, I didn't realize that she was already home. I didn't hear the front door slam because I was sitting in my office with headphones. When I went out to the kitchen to get water, I saw her suitcase at the doorstep. The living room light was on, and she was sitting on the couch, looking at her phone. "Oh, have you arrived already? Hello?" I hastily took off my headphones. In my chest, I felt joy and excitement. "How did you go?" "Hi." She looked up from the screen. Her voice was muffled, tired. "Everything was fine. I was just exhausted." The plane was delayed for 3 hours, and then there was a long wait for luggage. "I understand." I sat down next to her and noticed that she was somehow wary. I wanted to hug her, but she quickly moved away under the pretext that she needed to undress and take a shower. I pretended not to pay attention. "Well, it's okay, let's rest, and tomorrow you'll tell me all the details. I made your favorite chicken soup. I can heat it up." "Thank you," Laura smiled tightly. "I think I'll take a shower and go to bed, if that's okay." Of course, I don't mind. While she was in the bathroom, I unzipped her suitcase to take out the gifts she usually brought. Laura loved to please me with little things from her trips. Magnets, mugs, maybe something funny with the festival logo. But this time there was chaos inside the suitcase. Things seemed to be crammed in disarray, as if in a hurry. The t-shirt lay next to the scattered cosmetic kit. I carefully removed the scattered tubes and suddenly noticed a small stain on one of the dresses, a black evening dress that she wore to formal events. It was pale pink in color, with a slight scent reminiscent of someone else's perfume or cologne. My heart sank, although I tried to brush it off. Maybe someone in the crowd just touched her or spilled champagne. But the smell was strangely cloying, rather masculine, with some oriental notes. I immediately remembered my disturbing dreams and conversations about Kyle. He swallowed the lump in his throat, carefully folded the dress back, and closed the suitcase. I decided not to make hasty conclusions. Laura came out of the bathroom in a terry robe, her hair falling in damp strands over her shoulders. She said she was terribly tired and went straight to the bedroom. I tried to hint that I would like to hug her, but she brushed it off, citing a migraine from the flight. I had no choice but to turn off the light in the corridor and lie down next to me, trying to understand what was happening. Over the next few days, my anxiety only grew. Laura returned home late, saying that she had meetings with customers. But I knew that officially she didn't have to have any major projects right now. The Miami Festival was the main event of the season. I noticed that she began to be more careful with her phone. She always carried it with her, even in the bathroom, and put it on silent mode. Previously, he usually lay in the living room or in the kitchen, and she did not attach any importance to it. One evening, I heard her talking to someone in the kitchen in a low voice. I decided to listen in, but there was no speakerphone. Apparently, she spoke through an earpiece or instant messenger. There was tension in her voice. Laura whispers, "Listen, I can't right now." "Yes, he's home." "Yes, of course I remember." "No, I haven't decided yet." "Okay, I'll write to you." When I walked into the kitchen, she turned around abruptly, as if taken by surprise. "Who are you talking to?" I asked as innocently as possible, although everything was boiling inside me. "Yes, for work." She glanced past me, smiling nervously. "Did you want something?" I looked at her silently and shrugged. "I'm thirsty, just take some water." While I was taking the glass, she turned off the call and pretended to be busy with some papers on the table. It became clear to me, she clearly didn't want me to hear anything. If this was a simple work moment, she would not whisper to the side or hide. But I still tried to remain calm. I hardly slept that night. He was spinning around, coming up with explanations. Maybe she's planning something, a birthday surprise or something to do with a new customer. But no, the birthday is not soon, and Laura's behavior rather indicated that she was afraid that her conversation should not reach my ears. My suspicions grew stronger. On the fourth day after her arrival, we had a difficult conversation. I decided to ask directly. "Laura, are you okay? I see that you seem to be avoiding me. Maybe we can talk." She was sitting on the sofa, leafing through a magazine, but upon hearing my direct address, she instantly tensed up. "Yes, everything is fine. There's just a lot to do." "What's going on?" "You said that you are taking a short break after the festival. Who do you meet with in the evenings?" Her eyes lit up with displeasure. "Are you following me? I don't have to answer you for every step I take. I don't require reports. I just want to understand what's going on because you're acting weird. We hardly talk. You come home late, talk on the phone furtively, as if you're afraid that I'll hear. This is my personal life," she blurted out. "Yes, I have the right to personal space. You always had it. But we've been married for 15 years, and before we shared everything, our joys, worries, news. Why are you shutting yourself off now?" She was silent for a long time, then stood up and said, "Enough. I'm tired of your questions and suspicions. I need air." She went into the bedroom and slammed the door. I was left alone in the living room, looking at the empty sofa. My chest felt tight, as if I had been hit in the solar plexus. "We've never talked like this before." She accused me of being suspicious, but I felt that these were not empty fantasies. There was a rift between us, and I didn't understand how to mend it. It was the fifth day after Laura returned from Miami. I got a call this morning and was invited to a dinner party with a major client of her agency. Formally, this was not my client, but Laura said that many acquaintances from the industry would come there, and in general, "Let's go together, you're my husband." She herself, however, did not seem particularly enthusiastic, but I thought this was a chance to spend a little time with her and sort things out in a calmer environment. The party took place in one of the prestigious hotel rooms in downtown Portland. When we arrived, I immediately noticed a lot of expensive cars in the parking lot: BMW, Mercedes, Tesla. The event itself looked gorgeous: red carpets, waiters in white gloves, live music. Laura was in an elegant blue dress, discreet, but emphasizing her figure. As usual, I was wearing a classic dark suit. We entered the hall, and Laura immediately rushed to her friends. I walked alongside, joined in the conversations, but felt a little alien. I was introduced as the wife of Laura, a talented architect, but they talked more and more about PR, new projects, and all they heard was, "Who will speak? What kind of funding?" I sometimes smiled and politely exchanged phrases, although inside I still felt tension due to our recent quarrels. At some point, when I went for a glass of champagne to take a break from all this social glitter, I noticed Kyle Hendricks enter the hall. I recognized him from photographs, a blond guy, slightly taller than me, with a cheeky smile and in an expensive suit. He was clearly not wearing a chef's uniform after all. This was an evening reception. But even without a white jacket, he attracted glances. The people around immediately perked up. Someone began to come up, say hello, and shake hands. He seemed to be considered a local celebrity. Laura was standing nearby with her colleagues, and I noticed Kyle heading straight towards her. She smiled at him, and they exchanged a few words. My heart sank when I saw him lean slightly towards her ear and say something, and Laura smiled shyly. "Calm down, Mark, calm down," I said to myself, and took a large sip of champagne. I watched them from afar for several minutes. Kyle put his arm around Laura's shoulder and laughed loudly, attracting attention. She answered him something, also laughed, but at the same time cast anxious glances around, clearly trying not to notice me. Finally, I got tired of it. I decided to come closer. Let everything be in plain sight. I won't stand by like a deluded fool. As I approached, Kyle turned to me and smiled widely. "Oh, so you're Mark, Laura's husband? Nice to meet you." "I'm Kyle, the guy from TV." He laughed at his own joke. "Your wife has talked so much about you." "Nice to meet you," I nodded, trying to control myself. Laura stood nearby, begging me with her eyes not to make a scene. I tried to look friendly, although inside I was seething. We exchanged a few phrases about the festival, success in Miami, and it all seemed suspiciously forced to me. After some time, other guests arrived and formal conversations began. I stepped aside a little and poured myself another glass of wine. Laura and Kyle continued to stand together, discussing something. I tried not to look in their direction, but periodically I caught myself looking for any little thing, gestures, glances. Every time he touched her hand or leaned toward her playfully, I felt a dull rage building inside me. The climax occurred when the waiters brought new wine and all the toasts began to repeat themselves. Kyle was already pretty tipsy. He generally behaved like a star who could do anything. He waved his glass, laughed loudly, and made jokes that bordered on the edge of decency. At some point, I heard him, flushed from drinking, throw towards one of the guests. "You just don't know how fiery Laura is when she needs it." I have the good fortune to witness this personally. He raised his eyebrows and finished his wine in one gulp. Everyone around fell silent, and he, having feignedly caught himself, continued. "Oh, sorry, I hope my husband won't be offended. Although, I think he already knows that we have her." And then he stopped, realizing that he had gone too far. I felt the blood rush to my head. This drunk bastard was literally hinting at their intimate relationship. The entire audience clearly felt the tension. Someone pretended not to hear. Someone stared at us with interest. I put the glass on the table so that the glass clinked. "What do you mean, Kyle?" I asked, trying not to lose my temper. He grinned drunkenly and spread his arms. "Come on, man, don't act like a saint. Don't you know how people hang out at festivals? Everyone is entertaining each other." He swayed, almost knocking over his glass. "I'm your wife, you're my wife, woo-hoo." He tried to finish singing something, but his tongue got stuck. The hall was filled with painful silence. Laura stood with a pale face, as if her whole body had turned to stone. And then it was like I was hit with an electric shock. If only her words, "This is not true," escaped in time, I might have froze and started looking for a rational explanation. But she was silent. She was silent, looking to the side, and her eyes sparkled, as if ready to cry. I grabbed Kyle by the collar of his shirt. For a moment, I wanted to punch him right in the face, to break that smug smile. One of the guests screamed and reached out to separate us. I backhanded him in the chest. He staggered and dropped his glass. The noise of glass, the hum of voices. Laura grabbed my hand. "Mark, stop," but I didn't hear it anymore. I shouted something like, "You think I'll let you talk about my wife like that?" But his eyes looked at me mockingly from behind his reddened face, and I understood that there was no fear there, but rather bravado and the same devilish laughter. Finally, several men separated us. Kyle struggled, yelling something drunk and unintelligible. There was confusion in the hall. Someone was already filming all this on a phone. The holiday turned into chaos. I heard the host of the event trying to somehow rectify the situation, asking everyone to calm down. I turned to Laura, my whole chest shaking with rage and shame. It seemed to me that everyone was looking at me, pointing fingers. Here it is a public demonstration of my humiliation, my cuckoldry. I clenched my teeth, scorched her with an icy gaze, and, without saying a word, walked towards the exit. She rushed after me. "Mark, wait, don't touch me," I croaked, without turning around. "Go to your fiery chef if you so want. I've had enough." I walked outside, where the light rain mixed with the neon lights of the street signs. My breathing became unsteady. I got into the car, not knowing what to do or where to go. All I could feel at that moment was a mixture of colossal resentment, pain, and insane rage. My world seemed to turn upside down in an instant. I returned home that same evening, but did not find Laura there. About an hour later, she arrived by taxi. I sat in the living room, looking at the wall, as if trying to drill into it with my gaze. "Mark," she began, quietly closing the door behind her, "let me explain." "Explain what?" I looked up at her with a hard look. "What really happened between you? How long has this been going on?" She placed her purse on the floor by the threshold and took a few hesitant steps towards me. Her face showed fear and despair. It was a mistake. You see, after the festival everything happened somehow spontaneously. Kyle, he charmed me, I felt flattered. He was very persistent, and my head was spinning from the attention, from all this glamour. I really didn't want this to happen. My hands were shaking. I clenched my fists, trying not to lose my temper. So he told the truth. Your chef wasn't lying. Laura, what the hell? At the last moment, I restrained myself from hitting the table with my fist. Do you understand how painful it is for me to hear this? I'm sorry. Her voice trembled. I wanted to stop, but apparently I was too weak. Mark, it doesn't mean anything. It's not serious for me, really. I I don't even know why I gave in. Maybe she was looking for new sensations. I needed attention. I don't understand it myself. Not serious. I smiled bitterly. Does it seem frivolous to you that you actually slept with another man and lied to me for several weeks? She exhaled shakily. I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid. I thought everything would calm down on its own. I didn't know that Kyle was such a talkative idiot. This was one time when we were celebrating the success of the festival. I felt ashamed and stopped everything. Believe me, nothing else happened. He himself wanted me to quit and go to him. I refused. At that moment, I felt a flash of disgust. She considered this option, didn't she? Or what? So you also wanted to quit? My face was burning. My voice broke into a scream. Crap, Laura, who are you to me now? She came closer and tried to touch my hand, but I pulled her away as if I had been burned. Mark, please. Her voice sounded pleading. Let's try to fix everything. We shouldn't ruin a marriage like this because of one mistake. One mistake? I jumped up from my seat. You call this a mistake? This is a deliberate betrayal. I choked on my words, feeling a lump in my throat preventing me from speaking. Lord, how could you? I saw tears welling up in her eyes, but right now I didn't care. I didn't want to feel sorry for her. I didn't want to console her. It seemed to me that inside I was burning with hellish flames. I understand that this sounds terrible, she whispered, but I love you, Mark. I was wrong. I don't want to lose everything. Don't want to lose. It's already happened, Laura. Don't you understand? We had plans a new house, new projects. I ran my hand through my hair, trying to collect my thoughts. And you just took it all and trampled on it all, sleeping with the first person you met. He was not the first person he met. I knew him from work. She began, but realized that her words were only making the situation worse. I just don't know what came over me. Everything was mixed up. Emotions, drinks, compliments. Enough, I shouted. Do you think your excuses change the fact that you cheated on me? I don't know if I can trust you now. I don't even know if we can continue to live together. She shook her head in tears. Mark, please, I need you. And suddenly, something broke inside me. Having touched the remaining fragments of pride, I made a decision, and it seemed to come to me on its own. I cannot now stay with a person who betrayed me so openly and cynically. Maybe someday we can talk more calmly, but right now I need to leave her or kick her out, otherwise I will go crazy. Go away, I said, trying to keep my tone indifferent. Collect your things and leave. Go to your parents, go to your friends, rent a hotel, I don't care. I just don't want to see you in my house. Mark. You heard everything. I turned away, feeling how badly I wanted to scream and cry at the same time, but I held on. Right now. I don't know what will happen next, but I don't want you here tonight. She began to sob without moving from her place. But I was not going to change my decision. I took my car keys out of my pocket and threw them on the table. Take my car if you want, or order a taxi. I don't care. She stood there in a daze for a while, then grabbed her purse with a flourish and ran out of the room. About 5 minutes later, I heard the front door slam. The silence was broken only by the hum of the fans in the computer, which I forgot to turn off in the office. I sat down on the sofa, finally giving myself the freedom to burst into tears. It seemed to me that the heart had been torn out of my chest and stones had been filled there. Everything I had built in my head life with Laura, our future, collapsed in an instant. And this scene at the party, and her humiliating excuse, and tears, and my rage, everything mixed into a terrible lump that pulled me somewhere into the abyss. I spent the night in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. The pain did not subside, but rather intensified. Sometimes I jumped up, furious, and wanted to call her and express everything that was still boiling in my soul. But then he stopped himself. No, let him go. She chose this path herself. Instead, I just lay there and remembered the moments of our lives. Our first kiss by the ocean, her laughter at the wedding, our shared desire to build a family. And all this now seemed false, a deception. In the morning I dozed off, but not for long. At 6 in the morning, I woke up from a stiff neck and a strange cold in the room. It seemed that the house was empty, deprived of something vital. I realized that now everything will be different, from small things to global decisions. PR, food, pain, rage, despair, all this mixed up in me, ready to result in the continuation of the story, where there will be no place for the former trust. This was the beginning of my journey towards revenge, or perhaps liberation from it. Then I still didn't know where this path would lead me. All I knew was that I would never be the same again. I woke up in the middle of the night from the annoying ringing of my phone. It was almost dawn outside the window. A faint dawn seeped through the gap in the curtains, although the morning was still gloomy. I automatically reached for my smartphone while lying on the sofa. After the quarrel with Laura, I spent the night not in the bedroom, but here, in the living room, as if in some kind of intermediate space between the old life and the new nightmare. An unfamiliar number appeared on the screen. Who can call this early? I thought, nervously touching the call button. Hello? I said in a hoarse voice. Good morning, it's Juliet White, a representative of the legal department of the Jisen and Company agency that's bothering you. The woman on the other end began in a businesslike, cold intonation. I would like to discuss with you a situation that happened recently. My throat was dry. Jisen and Company is a large PR agency where Laura has worked in recent years. The same people who organize various festivals and represent famous chefs like Kyle. Just a couple of days ago, I would have reacted favorably to their call, but now resentment, anger, and contempt were raging within me. The situation. I asked again, trying to give my voice a touch of equanimity. You mean my conflict with Kyle Hendricks? Yes. Of course, we regret that the situation got so out of control at the party, she continued coldly. From a commercial point of view, it is extremely important for us that you, let's say, do not wash your dirty laundry in public. It's not just Mr. Hendricks' business reputation, but also the fact that our firm has invested heavily in his promotion. Any negative scandals could cost both us and Laura dearly if details of her affair suddenly come to light. I could barely restrain myself from boiling over. That's how it is, I thought bitterly. They care about the image, but not about my feelings. And what do you propose? I asked dryly. We are ready to make significant compensation so that this incident does not become public knowledge. The woman continued to speak in an even voice, as if she were talking about meat prices or the rental of office space. Our proposal, and then she voiced a very substantial amount, is in the form of a lump sum payment. In exchange, you sign a package of non-disclosure documents. Everything that happened, including the details of the possible divorce, will remain between us. I almost dropped my phone. The conversation wasn't even about thousands of dollars, a sum that could change my life, an amount I never dared to dream of. But why are they paying me so much? For silence, for betraying my wife, for the humiliation I felt in front of all the guests when this drunken star chef let loose his tongue. Sorry, Miss White, I said, trying to sound as restrained as possible, but my divorce is my own business. And if Laura cheated on me, I have every right to tell the whole world about it. Or do you think that I need your money to wipe my pride with it? Understand, mister. The woman hesitated, apparently remembering my name, Mr. Devereux. This step is a pure formality and concern for the reputation of all parties. Our company values Laura's contributions. She is a valuable asset, and we wouldn't want her career to be ruined by some minor scandal. A minor scandal. I lost my temper, unable to control my tone. She cheated on me. This is not a minor scandal. This is my life. There was a short pause at the other end of the line. I understand your emotional background, but I strongly advise you to consider the proposal. $3 million is not lying on the road. In addition, Laura is ready to sign a divorce without disputes about the division of property if you take the money and maintain confidentiality. My heart sank with pain and anger. Laura is ready. This means that she has already discussed everything with them. What was I waiting for? That after her words about love and repentance, she will crawl on her knees. No, it seems that everything went according to some cynical PR agency scenario. I need time, I managed. I'll contact you when I've thought it over. Okay, we have no goal to put pressure on you, but keep in mind that our offer is valid for a limited time. You know how the market works. A scandal must be extinguished quickly. We will send you a written form of the contract by email. I muttered a short goodbye and hung up the call. There were so many emotions raging inside me that I was shaking. I sat down on the sofa and squeezed the phone in my hand. Crap. Of course, for an ordinary architect of medium-sized projects, this is a colossal amount of money. But at the same time, it's like selling your honor and voice. The agency wants me to shut up and not expose Kyle or publicize Laura's actions. About an hour later, already closer to 9 in the morning, I received a short version of the contract by email. Legal non-disclosure language was listed. By that time, I was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, reading these cold phrases and feeling disgust and annoyance rising. On the one hand, there was a strong desire to throw this contract aside and say, "Fuck you." On the other hand, I understood that in the event of a protracted divorce and scandal, I could be left with nothing and even receive legal costs. My head was pounding. I decided it was time to call a lawyer. I used to know a lawyer, but we didn't meet for a long time. I took out my business card and found his number, but no one answered the phone. He twirled the phone in his hands bitterly. Maybe contact someone else. However, the name of Emily, an old friend of mine from my student days, came to mind. She moved to Portland a long time ago and works as a civil lawyer. I knew that I could trust her at least. She always helped her friends in difficult moments. Having gathered my resolve, I opened my contact list and found her number. We haven't talked for a long time, but I hope he won't take my call as something strange, I thought. I pressed the call and listened to the beeps. Hello, I heard her joyful voice. Mark, how many years, how many winters, how are you? I squeezed out a crooked smile, even though she couldn't see me. Emily, hi. This is not a very pleasant situation for me. I need the help of a good lawyer. Can we meet? She hesitated for just a moment. Certainly. I currently work at the law office of Cohen, Bowman and Price downtown. Come, let's discuss. I'll be free after lunch. Thank you. I will. After hanging up the phone, I realized that Laura and Kyle's agents were already trying to resolve the scandal in their own way, and I, slammed in my personal tragedy, was marking time. You need to act so as not to find yourself in the role of an eternal terrified. It looks like we'll have to look into this dark pool and see what's hiding there. I arrived in downtown Portland at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The office where Emily worked was located in an old building with classic brickwork, decorated with carved elements. Everything inside looked modern: glass, metal, shining signs with the names of partners. The administrator led me into a small meeting room overlooking a busy street. While I waited, I nervously leafed through some legal booklets, but my thoughts took me to what was happening in my life. Just a week ago, I had a normal family life, but now everything was going downhill, and I had to decide whether to accept dirty money for my silence or fight for the truth. But what is the truth anyway if the marriage is already broken? A few minutes later, the door opened and Emily entered the office. She has hardly changed since her student days: strict, fit, with short bangs over her eyes, in an elegant business suit, except that an adult seriousness appeared in her gaze. "Mark," she smiled, coming up to me. We hugged briefly, like old friends who hadn't seen each other for years. "I was so surprised by your call. Tell me what happened." We sat down at the table. I started telling everything from how Laura left for Miami to the public embarrassment at the party and the call from the agency. Emily listened attentively without interrupting and occasionally made notes in her notebook. "Oh my God." She sighed when I finished. "This is the story. I'm so sorry you're going through this." "Thank you," I muttered. "Tell me, as a lawyer, what should I do? Should I sign those damn non-disclosure papers and take the money or try to fight them in court?" Emily tilted her head to the side, considering her options. "It all depends on your goals. If you want to close the page as quickly as possible and receive a large amount, you can sign. But keep in mind that this will not be just a signature on paper. You will be obliged not to disclose the fact of betrayal and possibly other details that may affect the reputation of the agency or Kyle. If you break the agreement, you could face a serious lawsuit. But I don't want this bastard to go unpunished. Kyle humiliated me publicly, and he seemed to have no remorse." Emily frowned. "Understand, I myself would like him to get what he deserves. But he has a huge PR machine and lawyers behind him. You can be dragged through the courts until it seems like little." "Sorry for asking." Emily leaned forward, gently touching my arm. "What about Laura? Is she really offering money in exchange for the silent man?" "It seems so," I confirmed bitterly. "She doesn't really talk to me yet. And when I kicked her out, she just shed tears, asked for forgiveness, and then disappeared. Well, after that I received a call from the agency. Maybe she's confused too." Emily pursed her lips. "I don't want to defend anyone, but sometimes women do things that they later regret. Understand, Mark, people don't always act rationally. What difference does it make to me?" I finally threw out my pain. "She betrayed me, and now like this." She seems to be crying and guilty, but at the same time she's calling in lawyers to keep me silent. "Well, let it go to hell." Emily nodded, writing something down. "From a legal point of view, the decision is yours. I can help you understand the intricacies of the documents and discuss strategy if you decide not to sign the agreement. But then we need to prepare for a possible long war. PR people can use any tricks." "I'll think," I answered after a short pause, looking down at the table. "I'm not ready to make a decision yet." "Fine. What about a personal plan? Apartment, property, everything is registered in your name. Do you have jointly acquired property?" "Our house is an inheritance from my parents. Formally, it is registered in my name, so there is no need to divide it. The rest, in general, there is nothing large together, except maybe a bank account. But there's not too much there now. I have a car, but it's in my name. Essentially, this is not something worth suing over." Emily nodded and then asked, "What about the moral aspect? Are you going to try to save your marriage?" I looked at her hard. "Emily, I don't know. I'm in unbearable pain right now. I'm furious and she's a traitor. But maybe I still love her. This is difficult to understand. My mind screams, get a divorce as quickly as possible, and my heart aches. But this is Laura. We've been together for 15 years. These are completely normal feelings," Emily said quietly. "I myself went through a divorce a couple of years ago, and it's very difficult, even without cheating. So I understand how you feel." I raised my eyebrows in amazement. "Are you divorced?" "Sorry, I didn't know. We haven't talked for a long time." She smiled sadly. "Yes, that's right. Let's not talk about my problems now. As for you, let's do this. I'll take copies of the documents that the office sent you, study them, and write an analysis. If you want, I can represent your interests. But this matter must be handled carefully. The people we are dealing with are very influential." I nodded, feeling a little lighter. At least I now had an ally I could trust. Even though I had not yet made a decision about how I would seek revenge or release myself from the pain, Emily's presence gave me hope that I would not wallow in this nightmare alone. We agreed on the next meeting and said goodbye. Leaving the office, I took a deep breath of cool spring air. The noise of the street and people scurrying past slightly distracted me from my gloomy thoughts. "Okay," I told myself, "one step at a time. First, we need to deal with these hucksters who want to buy my silence, and then we'll see how life turns out." A few days passed, and my anger dimmed a little, making room for a cooler analysis. From time to time, I felt another wave of pain wash over me, memories of how Laura smiled at me, of our shared plans. But more and more often, I turned into a kind of detective, determined to get to the bottom of the truth. Part of what prompted me to do this was the questions Emily asked at our meetings. What if Kyle has been in the business of seducing married women like this for a long time? What if Laura is not the first to fall into his web? I decided not to sit idly by and started scouring the internet, trying to find something related to the name Kyle Hendricks. His PR was very powerful on all websites and blogs. He was praised for his innovative methods in cooking, for his amazing charisma and telegenicity. But I suspected that somewhere deep down there must be a dark side. One evening, while I was sitting at the computer, I received a message from Emily. "Call me, I found something interesting on Kyle." I immediately dialed her number. "Hi," she said when she answered. "I sniffed out rumors that he was previously involved in some scandal with the daughter of a famous restaurateur in Boston. There is also something about treason, but the story quickly died down. It seems that the girl's father was a large investor who hid the matter with money so that it would not go to the tabloids. So Kyle has already had such feats." I clenched my teeth. "And no one brought him to justice." "I guess not," Emily sighed. "But some bloggers have been discussing this rumor on forums. They say that Kyle uses his celebrity and charm to seduce women, and then abandons them, moving on to the next victim. Some write that he is simply a ring hunter, that is, he prefers married ladies." I felt a new round of rage flare up inside me. So he really is a manipulator, I thought. Laura became his latest trophy victim. "I want to know more," I said decisively. "Maybe there is some ex-girlfriend or deceived woman who is ready to share information. I read that there is a certain Molly Richardson in New York. They say she dated Kyle before he became famous. Rumor has it that she was in a relationship with him until he started having affairs on the side. She is married now and may not want to bring up the past, but it's worth trying to talk to her. I found out from friends that she left one comment on Reddit where she spoke quite viciously about Kyle. True, I later deleted it. We can try to reach her through social networks." I thought for a moment, realizing what I was getting myself into. This already looks like a real investigation, as if I was hunting for a criminal. But Kyle really did a lot of damage to me, and probably to Laura too. She became a victim of his charm, but at the same time, it was her own fault that she succumbed. I suddenly realized that I was trying to shift some of the blame from Laura to Kyle so that it would be easier to forgive her. Or I just want to take revenge on both of them, said an inner voice. Okay, let's try, I finally answered. The more we learn, the easier it will be for me in a legal or moral confrontation. I'll contact Molly through general contacts, Emily promised. If she agrees to talk, I'll let you know. I thanked her and hung up. It's strange, after this conversation I felt as if a certain drive had appeared in me. Anger was degenerating into determination. I wanted to get to the bottom of it, collect materials, and publicly expose Kyle. Although, when I remembered the proposal from the PR agency, the internal contradiction only grew. If I signed a non-disclosure agreement, I would not be able to make his dirty deeds public. But taking $3 million and moving on with your life is also tempting. I was at a crossroads. The next day, in addition to all this confusion, I had to go to a construction site in the suburbs of Portland for work. I designed a small ranch-style home for one client. It's funny to say, as if in a parallel universe, I was still that same professional architect who should be responsible to clients. Immersed in discussions with the construction team, I forgot about my personal problems for a while. But when I returned to the car after inspecting the facility, my phone showed several missed calls from Laura. My heart sank because since our breakup, we hadn't really spoken. I hesitated whether to call back or not. Finally, deciding that I had nothing to fear, I pressed the callback button. She answered almost instantly. Mark. I heard tension mixed with fear in her voice. Why don't you pick up the phone? Sorry, I was busy with work, I muttered. I wanted to say. A tremble appeared in her voice. I need to pick up some things from home. Can I come over tonight? I paused, remembering how I kicked her out, what state I was in. The resentment flared up with renewed vigor, but I understood that we would still have to resolve everyday issues. Okay, come, I said through clenched teeth. Just don't expect us to drink tea and discuss the weather. I'm not ready to communicate. I understand, she whispered. Thank you. I'll be there around 7. We said goodbye. I felt an unusual excitement, not that I was eager to meet, but there was a glimmer of hope in my soul that maybe she would say something sincere, something that I needed to hear. Will the pain strike again when I see her face? For sure. But I realized that running away is not an option. We'll have to face reality. I need to keep moving forward, no matter how hard it gets. That same day dragged on like an eternity. I returned home early to prepare for Laura's arrival. For some reason, I cleaned up. Although I had no desire, I just didn't know what to do with myself. I threw out the accumulated garbage and ventilated the rooms. I caught myself automatically washing the plate where Laura usually liked to eat her morning cereal, and I thought when she was at home, we shared everything. Even the little things in everyday life had a common atmosphere, a common meaning. Now the house felt empty. I glanced at the sofa in the living room, a reminder of several sleepless nights spent alone. Memories surfaced in my head as if some internal film projector was turned on non-stop. I saw how Laura and I met. I was 29, she was just over 25. I was already doing drawings and working in the evenings in a small architectural bureau. She was an assistant at corporate events, and one day she was sent to our company to organize a party in honor of the opening of a branch. I immediately noticed her energy, her smile. Everything inside me seemed to light up. We chatted all evening over the buffet table, and I, who in principle do not like noisy parties, felt that this girl was restoring my faith that the world could be easy and beautiful. Then we had dates on the Portland waterfront. We took coffee, watched the boats go by, and talked about dreams. I told her about how I wanted to build my own house, someday in the Art Nouveau style with large panoramic windows. She shared plans about how she would organize large festivals herself, perhaps even somewhere in New York or Miami. Then her eyes sparkled with ambition, and I believed in her. We both dreamed of accomplishments, but valued simple pleasures, picnics, hugs, the taste of good wine in the evenings. Poor wedding flashed in a small country club. She walked towards me in a white dress, and I, worried, almost dropped the ring. and how we laughed when in the evening we discovered that we had forgotten to take a spare dress and Laura had to wear my shirt after the formal part. Those moments were saturated with love and youth. And where is all this now? I felt my heart clench with acute melancholy. After all, we were not just a couple, we were a team, a family. Yes, it happened that we quarreled, but we always made up. And now she cheated on me with this Kyle, broke our idyll in one night, due to drunkenness and flirting. But if you believe her, she herself did not understand what she was doing. Or did she? I tried to understand where that imperceptible border was that we stopped being truly close. Maybe I didn't pay enough attention to her, immersed in my work. Maybe I stopped giving her surprises and going to restaurants. People often say, she cheats not because of someone else, but because something is missing at home. But can betrayal be justified by the fact that something was missing at home? Thinking about all this, I looked at my watch and realized that the appointed hour was approaching. Laura was supposed to come. I suddenly felt a trembling in my hands. Deciding to calm down, I poured myself some whiskey into a glass to get my nervous system under control. But he didn't even have time to take a couple of sips when he heard the key turn in the lock. She entered quietly, looking a little confused. Her hair is braided into a low bun, and she wears a simple black coat over her shoulders. When she saw me, she tensed slightly, and I realized that emotions were boiling inside me again. "Hello," she said quietly. "Hello," I responded coldly. "What did you want to take?" "A few things." She lowered her gaze and took it to the side. "Bathroom accessories, some clothes." I nodded silently, making it clear, "Do what you want, I'm not going to cause a scandal." She went into the bedroom. I stayed in the living room, listening to the sounds of her steps and the closet doors opening. I felt like a stranger in my own home. Finally, after a couple of minutes, she returned with a small bag and stood in front of me, looking completely confused. "Mark, I want to talk, if possible." "Talk," I shrugged, trying to keep an impassive face. She lowered her bag to the floor, sighed, and looked me straight in the eyes. "I understand that I have no excuses. What I did was terrible, but I would like you to know that it was not my intention to betray you. I really made a mistake." "Made a mistake." I smiled bitterly. "Did you just accidentally fall on his bed?" "Don't." Laura frowned, her voice trembled. "Yes, I admit I made a choice. But you have to understand that I felt lonely. I wanted to be needed, and you." She stopped short, as if she was afraid to say too much. "What am I doing?" "Continue." I clenched my fist, anticipating the blow. "You've been so absorbed in work, home, technical details lately. I tried to show that I lack emotions, intimacy, and passion, but you didn't seem to notice. And in Miami, there was this courage, a lot of alcohol. Kyle kept complimenting me. He was delighted with me." I chuckled ironically. "Amazing story, Laura. So, in your opinion, it's my fault that I paid little attention to you?" "No," she hastened to justify herself. "I do not absolve myself of responsibility. Understand, I feel guilty, but I want you to understand that it's not that simple. I didn't want to ruin our marriage. I love you." I silently looked away. The words, "I love you," now sounded like an empty phrase to me. Maybe she is really worried, but is this love? "And what next?" I asked finally. "Do you want to go back and pretend nothing happened?" "I don't know. I want to fix the situation. But I see the way you look at me, and I understand that perhaps you will never forgive me." "You're right. I don't know if I can forgive. So far I feel only rage and pain." We fell silent for a while. In the silence, only the roar of the wind outside the window could be heard. "Laura, do you even realize that your agency is offering me money for silence? 3 million. They want to buy my agreement not to disclose your affair with Kyle." She raised her eyebrows in surprise. "I know that they want no one to stir up a scandal, but I didn't think the amount was so big." "Well, of course I didn't think so. Is everything being done behind your back?" I exhaled, shaking my head. "Okay, I don't want to start a showdown now. Do what you think is necessary. Here are your things. If you want to talk more about your divorce, hire a lawyer." I will also act through a lawyer. Laura stood there for a few seconds with a downcast look. Then she said quietly, "Fine, I'll leave. But if you want to talk without lawyers, call me, okay?" "We'll see," I said shortly. She took the bag, looked at me again with wet eyes, and left the house. When the door slammed, I realized that my love and hatred for her were intertwined into one inseparable ball. She was still a close person to me, but at the same time she turned into someone else's woman who through some careless act ruined our years of life together. The day after her visit, I tried to concentrate on work, but her words kept repeating in my head. "I felt lonely, you didn't notice me." Maybe this was her way of shifting some of the blame onto me, or maybe the truth is that I really stopped giving her what she needed. In the evening, I decided to let it all out. I wrote her a message in the messenger. "We need to see each other and negotiate everything to the end. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the coffee shop on 3rd Avenue. I sent it and waited for a response. Half an hour later, her short "okay" came. When evening came, I arrived at the coffee shop a little earlier. It was a cozy place where we used to love to have breakfast on the weekends. I didn't notice any of the familiar visitors. I ordered an Americano, sat down at a table by the window, and began to look out onto the street. It was raining lightly, and the flashing headlights of passing cars were reflected in the wet asphalt. Laura showed up exactly at 7. She was wearing a brown coat, and her hair was down. I noticed that she had lost a little weight. Her cheekbones became sharper, her eyes sunken. Apparently, her nights were no sweeter than mine. "Hello," she said quietly, sitting down opposite him. "Hello, would you like to order something?" "Yes, please, lavender latte." I nodded, placed the barista's order, then returned to the table. A tense silence hung between us, which was hardly softened by the pleasant music of the coffee shop. "So," I began, "I decided that we needed to discuss the details." "Have you already talked to a lawyer?" "Yes, I hired a lawyer." She nervously twirled a strand of hair around her finger. "He says that if we compromise, we can divorce amicably. But—" She paused for a moment. "I still hope that it won't come to a divorce." "Do you seriously think that we can stay together after what happened?" Bitterness was in my throat. "I know that this is practically impossible." But suddenly, her voice trembled. "If you gave me a chance to fix everything, I might leave the agency so I don't have to deal with Kyle. I'm ready to go to therapy or whatever." I looked at her, half madly trying to assess whether there was sincerity in her words. Is this the Laura I loved, or am I talking to someone I no longer understand? Then they brought her latte. She thanked the waiter and took a sip. I was silent, feeling resentment welling up inside me. But he spoke, trying to keep his tone even. "Laura, do you really think that just leaving the agency is enough to erase your romance with this? Kyle, I don't know if I'll ever be able to get rid of the image of him publicly bragging about your affair." She bowed her head. "I understand. I myself hate to remember that scene. But believe me, I wanted to break everything off with him. He really pestered me with offers to go to him, to live in New York or Miami. I don't need it, I only love you." I almost laughed bitterly. How strange words about love sound when you have already slept with someone else. "Don't be offended, I just can't take this seriously right now." She squeezed the cup so hard that I was afraid it would crack. "Mark, tell me honestly, is there even the slightest chance that you will be able to forgive me over time?" I faltered, my inner voice screaming, "No, never." But I remembered how much we went through together, about the memories that pain does not allow me to forget. "To be honest, I don't know," I said quietly. "I don't want anything to do with you right now. I feel like I've been trampled inside. But I don't have an answer to what will happen in a year or two. Perhaps everything will be overgrown with scars, and only a bitter aftertaste will remain. Or maybe I will never be able to forgive." "I understand everything. By the way, I want to talk about the documents that your agency sent me." I felt the printed draft agreement in my pocket. As I understand, they have a powerful legal machine. They want to put out the scandal with money. I know, she admitted sadly. They put a lot of pressure on me too. A loud divorce is not beneficial for them, especially with the prefix treason. But I do not consent to their methods. Although, if I had a lot of money, I would have sorted everything out myself. That's how it is, I winced. Then, apparently, we have different ideas about how to solve problems. Look, I don't care what they want anymore. I myself don't know whether to accept their offer or not. Our conversation was interrupted because a noisy group of students entered the coffee shop, and the room became crowded and bustling. We fell silent for a while, drinking from our cups. I noticed Laura looking around nervously, as if she was afraid that someone would hear or recognize us. Maybe we can go somewhere quieter, she suggested. No, I don't want to give you false hope. I need to be alone. If you have specific questions about the division of property, about divorce, solve it with my lawyer. I stood up, took out my wallet, and threw a bill on the table for our drinks. Sorry, I can't have these conversations anymore. I'm in pain. Laura remained sitting, looking depressed. I turned around and headed towards the exit. The wet Portland air hit my face, forcing me to clear my head. As I approached the car, I realized that I was shaking. It's hard to describe the feeling I felt, a mixture of pity for her, hatred, and my own powerlessness. Deep inside, I was itching. What if she really repents? But then the picture of her hugging Kyle popped up, and all pity evaporated. This is not the time for sentiment, I told myself as I got behind the wheel. I need to act more harshly, otherwise I'll just get crushed. The next day, Emily wrote that Molly Richardson, Kyle's ex-girlfriend from New York, had agreed to talk to me. I'm not sure it was easy for her to decide on this, but apparently she still had an old grudge. We agreed to video call in the evening. I sat in my home office with my laptop, feeling my insides bubble with anticipation. Maybe I'll finally have hard evidence that that bastard Hendricks is a serial cheater, and if I post them publicly, it will be a crushing blow for him. The screen lit up, and I saw a young woman about 30 with long blonde hair on the line, light makeup on her face, but signs of fatigue visible under her eyes. She seemed wary. "Hello," I said softly so as not to scare her. "My name is Mark. I understand that it's not easy for you to remember these things, but thank you for agreeing to talk." "Hi," she replied, pursing her lips. "Emily told me everything. I know you ran into Kyle. I'm sorry, my emotions are overwhelming me. He deceived me very much once. Tell me, please, if it doesn't hurt too much," I asked, trying to speak sympathetically. What exactly was the betrayal? Molly sighed, running her hand through her hair. "We met 6 years ago, when he was just beginning to rise in the culinary world. I was then working as a hostess in a trendy restaurant in Soho, and he was still a chef in another establishment, but was already making a name for himself. At first, everything was nice. He looked after me, said that I inspired him to create new dishes. We started dating, and I moved in with him. I sincerely believed that we would start a family. And what went wrong? I noticed that he constantly receives messages from some women." Molly closed her eyes, as if recalling unpleasant details. "When I asked who it was, he waved it off. Fans, we need to maintain contact for the sake of image." I believed it. But then I began to notice that he came home late and smelled of someone else's perfume. In general, he systematically cheated on me. I caught him one day when he forgot to log out of his laptop. There was a correspondence full of flirting and even photographs. It turned out that he had several women in parallel. I clenched my teeth. "And what did you do?" "I had a fight, packed my things, and left. He didn't even try to get me back. He already had someone else. Moreover, if rumors are to be believed, she was the wife of the owner of some restaurant chain. This was beneficial to him because he wanted to attract investment. In short, for him, personal relationships are just a tool for his career." Molly smiled bitterly. "My problem is that I allowed him to manipulate me for too long. It was only when I broke up with him that I realized what a trap he had pulled me into." I listened carefully. "So he deliberately seduces influential or promising women?" "Yes, according to my observations. I think he likes the feeling of power." "Well, plus material or career benefits. I wouldn't be surprised if he had not just an affair with your wife, but some kind of calculation. My heart sank, although I already felt a lot of anger towards Laura. But hearing that Kyle could trivially use her was a new pain. Maybe she was just a fun trophy for him. It's even more offensive to realize that she gave in so easily. Thank you for your honesty, Molly. I really appreciate it. I have a question. Do you have any evidence left? Correspondence, photos, videos, maybe? She shook her head. I deleted almost everything when we broke up. I didn't want to keep these memories. But maybe there is something left in the old archives, somewhere on the hard drive. I'll look. If I find it, I'll send it to Emily, and she'll give it to you. It would be great. Any clue will help. Just keep in mind that if you are going to fight with Kyle publicly, be prepared for a response. He is not stupid and knows how to turn things around. He has an army of PR people and lawyers. I know, I answered gloomily, but we have to stop him at least once. He destroys families. Molly perked up. Look, to be honest, I still have anger inside me for what he did. If you need help, advice, or moral support, please contact us. Thank you. I felt grateful to this woman I had never known before. I'll get your contact information from Emily. Maybe we'll get in touch again. We said goodbye. Turning off the video link, I sat back, thinking. So, the picture is more than clear. Kyle is a womanizer, a manipulator, a hunter of other people's wives, using them for personal gain. Perhaps he clung to Laura because of her connections in the agency, her prospects. But this does not negate the fact that Laura voluntarily agreed to do this. Damn, how disgusting everything is, I thought, feeling a lump rise in my throat. But at the same time, my confidence grew that I was obliged to expose this man, or at least bring the situation to light. And if for this you have to give up 3 million, well, you have to. My pride and justice are at stake. A few days later, I was overcome with a feeling of loneliness and hopelessness. Despite the fact that I had some reinforcement in the person of Emily and Molly, my soul was torn with pain. The nights became unbearable. As soon as I closed my eyes, I saw Laura in Kyle's arms. I was twisted by jealousy, resentment, anger, even to the point of physical nausea. One evening I decided, stop suffering within 4 walls. I went to a local bar where I used to meet some work friends. It wasn't the fanciest bar, but it had its own atmosphere. Worn leather sofas, dim lamplight, and behind the counter, a good-natured bartender named John, who knew me by name. "Hello, Mark. Why do you come in so rarely?" he asked when I sat down at the counter. "Family problems," I said briefly, portraying a wry smile. "Give me a double whiskey, please." He nodded understandingly and placed the glass in front of me. I took a few sips, feeling the burn of the alcohol spreading down my throat. Maybe this bitter liquid can at least temporarily drown out my mental pain, I thought. I drank more, then ordered a second glass. Calm music was playing in the bar, and some of the visitors were talking quietly. I was lost in my own thoughts, looking at the reflection in the mirror behind the counter, a tired man with a dull look. "That's what betrayal did to me," I bitterly stated. "It turned me into a bitter person." The more I drank, the more emotional I became. I suddenly grabbed the phone and started dialing Laura's number, wanting to tell her everything that had not yet been said. But at the last moment the hand trembled. No, not now. Not in a drunken stupor. I had difficulty suppressing this impulse. But the thought of calling Kyle grew stronger. I imagined how I dialed his number, unleashing a stream of accusations and threats on him. But what will this give? He will most likely just laugh or record my call so he can use it against me later. I finished another glass and felt that I no longer perceived my surroundings very clearly. At that moment, a girl with red hair and wearing a warm sweater sat down on a stool next to me. She smiled and ordered a beer. I glanced at her. She seemed to have a pleasant, sweet face. But I had no time for flirting. "Hard day?" She turned to me, noticing my gloomy face. "You could say that," I muttered. "Personal life is downhill." "I understand," she sighed. Half of the visitors here are for the same reason, believe me. We exchanged a few words. It turned out that her name is Lauren, she was recently divorced, and now rents an apartment nearby. I listened out of the corner of my ear to her story, which also included betrayals and disappointments, and for some reason I felt a kinship of souls. Alcohol somewhat dulled my vigilance, and I almost without hesitation told her that my wife had cheated with the chef. What a bitch, Lauren made a sympathetic face, taking a sip of beer. Men also often cheat, so I understand your pain. We talked a little more, and at some point I noticed that she was stroking my shoulder, looking ready for closer contact. Normally, I would have backed away sharply, not allowing a strange woman to get so close to me. But that evening, everything inside me was mixed up. Alcohol, loneliness, thirst to forget about the pain, at least for a moment, everything pushed me to respond to her flirting. Maybe we should go to my place, she suggested, squinting. I hesitated. On the one hand, wild resentment. Since Laura slept with someone else, why shouldn't I do the same? To take revenge, even if indirectly. On the other hand, an inner voice whispered that this was a waste of time and that later I would feel even worse. I don't know, I muttered, squeezing the glass. I'm not even in the mood for something like that. Lauren sighed. Understand. Sorry if I was too pushy. I just thought I could help you take your mind off things. I looked at her carefully. The thought flashed through her head that she, too, was drowning out her pain with someone random. Sympathy and gratitude were mixed, but I still decided not to get involved in this. Thank you, that's nice, but it seems to me that I'm not at all ready for new connections right now. She nodded understandingly. Okay, then let's just have a drink in the company so that it won't be so sad. We sat for another hour, talking about trifles. Oddly enough, it made me feel a little better because there are people in the world who have also gone through similar things. Eventually, Lauren said goodbye and left, leaving me to finish my last drink. Just as the bar was about to close, a familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway. Emily. She noticed me, frowned, and approached. Mark, what are you doing here, alone and in this state? She asked, sitting down next to him. I wrote to you, I'm calling you, but you don't answer. Sorry, the phone is somewhere in my pocket, on silent. Relieving stress, I muttered, swaying. Emily frowned when she saw how much I drank. I don't think this will help you. Come on, I'll take you home. Yes, perhaps you're right. Holding my arm, she led me out of the bar to her car. While we were driving, she told me that she was trying to call me to give me new details. It turns out that someone saw Kyle with another woman at a recent event. He continues his adventures, she concluded. I just smiled wryly. Let him live as he wants. I no longer know if I want this war. Mark, I understand that you are tired, Emily said, casting worried glances at me. But you shouldn't give up. He and the agency should not ruin people's lives with impunity. I sighed heavily. The alcohol in my head told me that I didn't care, but common sense whispered that she was right. Finally, we arrived at my house. Emily helped me get to the door. I, holding onto the wall, muttered, Thank you. Sorry I got drunk like a pig. Okay, I understand everything. She smiled sadly. Get better. I'll call you tomorrow and we'll discuss what to do next. When the door closed behind her, I went to the sofa and felt exhausted. There came a moment of weakness, and I realized that I needed to pull myself together, otherwise I would simply fall into the abyss of despair. But at least tonight, I didn't have to fight my demons alone. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy head, but with a firm determination to pull myself together. It was necessary to urgently make some decisions on the documents that the agency sent me. I contacted Emily, and we agreed to meet at her office. When I arrived, she said that representatives of Jisen and Company had already contacted her, trying to amicably resolve the issue. It looked like obvious manipulation. If Mark signs, everything will be quiet and smooth. If not, difficulties will begin. Typical blackmail by reputation, which they were masters at. They actually intend to threaten to sue you if you decide to speak publicly, Emily explained, looking through the papers. The lawsuit will state that you are slandering their client, damaging his business reputation. Their lawyers are strong, so it simply won't happen. I don't care about their lawyers. I want the truth to come out. What can they do to me? I jumped up. They can prove that your accusation against Kyle is not supported by facts and force you to either pay compensation or sign an even harsher agreement. Plus, the media often supports celebrities rather than the angry husband who acts out of emotion. I ran my hands over my face, feeling tired. Damn, Emily, I'm stumped. I want to achieve justice, but I don't want to be left on the street penniless and still lose. What's the solution? The way out is through negotiations, she answered, putting the papers aside. You have a significant trump card. You can officially talk about the public scandal at the party, where Kyle drunkenly admitted that he had an affair with Laura. Witnesses will confirm this. But essentially, you have to break through the wall of their lawyers to get this story across. On the other hand, you have a substantial offer, and you can calmly leave the past behind and start a new life. I grimaced. That sounds like selling your soul to the devil, but sometimes I feel like I'm too tired to keep fighting. Emily looked at me thoughtfully. Listen, it takes time to think about everything. Yes, the agencies offer promises you an easy way out. But I know that inside you want justice. Don't make hasty decisions. We once again went over the legal issues. In the end, I asked Emily to delay responding to the agency until I finally decided. Meanwhile, the pressure from Kyle increased. At some point, he suddenly posted on his social networks that an unfortunate incident happened in his life with a jealous husband, but he asks all his supporters not to worry and to continue to support him on new tours. It was essentially a public apology along the lines of, I act above this, I'm sorry that this misunderstanding happened. And as always, thousands of fans wrote in the comments that he was such a sweetheart, it can't be his fault. I read this, gritting my teeth from powerlessness. People often believe the image created by PR people rather than the real facts. For most, he is a charming chef from the Gourmet Star TV channel, and I am an unknown architect whom no one knows. Who are they more likely to believe? What made the situation worse was that I was overcome by depression. After meeting Laura at the coffee shop, I couldn't get her words out of my head about how lonely she felt around me. What if it's really true and I'm just as guilty as she is? Questions like these were breaking my head, giving me no rest. However, the determination to get to the bottom of it did not disappear, but even intensified. After all, if Kyle and the agency are now avoiding responsibility, then perhaps this will happen again and again. And Laura, hell, maybe somewhere deep down, I still wanted to hear her beg me to forgive her, explaining that it was all a deception on Kyle's part. But the fact remains, she cheated on me. Emily and I decided to take a break for a week to think things through. But just 2 days after this decision, I received an unexpected call from Laura. Mark, she said, I got off work. Resigned from Jisen and Company Agency. What? I was sincerely surprised. For what? Because I'm disgusted to participate in all this. They literally forced me to sign papers confirming that I had no claims against Kyle, and I don't want to cooperate with people who so cynically sweep dirt under the carpet. I swallowed, feeling a strange lump in my throat. Are you serious? Where will you go now? Don't know. Maybe I'll find something else, or maybe I'll freelance for now. The agency threatens to blacklist me for event organizers, but I can't work there anymore. Laura, I tried to find words. I don't know what to say. Tell me that you understand that I didn't do everything out of self-interest, she answered bitterly. I'm not perfect, but I'm not a monster either. For a moment, I felt that she was actually taking a step forward, some kind of gesture that proved that she, too, was disgusted by the agency's policies. But the resentment still beat inside me. We said goodbye briefly, and I was left perplexed. Was her dismissal a sign of repentance or an attempt to get out of the situation? The day after Laura called, I received a letter from her. The most ordinary paper letter, written by hand. I did not expect this in the digital age, but upon opening the envelope, I immediately recognized her handwriting. My heart skipped a beat. The text was short, but full of emotion. Mark, I know that in your eyes I am a traitor, and there is no excuse for me. But I can no longer live in the atmosphere of lies and cynicism that Heisen and company instills. I quit. Yes, this means that I am losing sources of income and connections that I have worked for years, but I cannot help it. It may not win your trust back, but I want you to know that I care how you feel. I promise I won't interfere with your decisions, but if you allow me, I'm ready to help you expose Kyle if necessary. I can't turn back time, but I want to do at least something right. If you want to talk, call. Or let's meet at the end of the week at the Seattle Green Cafe, where we used to go on Sundays. L. After reading the letter, I sank into a chair, feeling a strange mixture of feelings. On the one hand, her dismissal and willingness to help looks like a step towards redemption. On the other hand, the pain did not go away, and could I trust her if she had already betrayed me once? I replayed in my head all our quarrels, everything she said about her guilt and attempts to make amends for it. Maybe deep down I still loved this woman, even though I was torn with anger, and her actions could be a manifestation of real repentance, or a cunning move to lull my vigilance. I decided not to rush into an answer. But life itself put everything in its place. A couple of days later, in the morning, I suddenly received news from one of my friends who worked in the media field. He said that Jisen and Co. came under suspicion due to financial fraud. One of the internal employees leaked documents to journalists that the agency was using investors' money for other purposes. What, really? I was amazed when I heard about this on the phone. What does my case have to do with it? Looks like there's no direct connection. But rumors say that they were running some kind of scheme with festival budgets, for example, with the same gastronomic event in Miami, the acquaintance answered. In general, a revealing article is being prepared. I felt a strange satisfaction welling up within me. So much for the influential agency that put so much pressure on me. Surely, if this scandal gets out, their reputation will be seriously damaged. This means that my story with Laura and Kyle may no longer be so important to them. In the end, the money offered to me for silence may crumble into dust if the office itself is covered by an investigation. I called Emily. You won't believe it, Jisen and Company is under investigation for financial fraud, she exclaimed in surprise. Yes, I've already heard. Incredible. Look, this might work to your advantage. If their reputation collapses, they are unlikely to be aggressive towards you. Perhaps they themselves are now busy trying to hide their criminal fraud. Yes, exactly. I chuckled. It seems that fate is taking an unusual turn. A suspicion flashed through my mind. Was it Laura who helped those journalists? After all, she recently quit. Perhaps she was the leaker of information. But there is not a word about this in the letter. Okay, if I want, I'll ask her when we meet. The situation was changing. Now the agency was under siege. What about Kyle? Most likely, he will distance himself from the scandal and try to maintain his image of a fashionable chef. But over time, people will learn the truth about Heisen and company, and maybe someone will dig into his affair with Laura. I knew that sooner or later I would encounter Kyle in person. After all our arguments, after the party, after the post that popped up on his social networks, where he only apologized for the incident, I felt that I needed to talk to him face to face, or at least pay a visit to put an end to it. The reason appeared by itself. I learned from one of our mutual acquaintances that Kyle was now in Portland, participating in a buffet at a restaurant opening in the center. At the same time, he promoted his new menu. I decided that I would go there and talk, not in front of a crowd, but in person when the opportunity presented itself. The evening turned out to be cool. I parked the car nearby and walked to the restaurant, where there was a crowd of guests, everyone in chic outfits, laughing, holding glasses of champagne. I walked inside, trying to remain calm. Nobody interfered. Apparently, they decided that I was part of the press or an invitee. I noticed Kyle right away. He was standing near the makeshift kitchen island, where he was giving a cooking master class. He looks like a peacock in a chef's uniform, but with an expensive gold bracelet on his arm. He radiated self-confidence. People clapped for him, and someone took pictures on their phones. I took a glass of drink from a passing waiter and hid in a corner, waiting for the show to end. Kyle caught a glimpse of me, his face trembled, but he quickly hid his emotions under a routine smile. When the show ended, he prepared to leave for the office area. I followed him through the staff hallway. Kyle, I called when we were relatively alone. He turned around. The look is cold, arrogant. "What do you want?" he said. "Do you want to start another fight?" "I want to talk," I replied, barely containing my rage. The same way civilized people talk when one of them has slept with the other's wife. He straightened up and looked me down. "Listen, man, I'm not your psychologist to listen to your grievances. You and Laura are adults. This is your marriage. What do I have to do with it? Despite the fact that you dragged her into bed, knowing full well that she was married, even though you publicly humiliated me at a party, you didn't even apologize properly. Did you apologize?" Kyle grinned. "I don't give a damn what you think. You're having marital problems there, and Laura was ready to take sides. I just offered her what she wanted, and she agreed. Maybe the problem is not with me, but with you?" I felt everything boiling inside. "You think you're a hero for seducing someone else's wife? Listen, all life is a hunt. Some hunt for money, others for women's charms. If you had the opportunity, you would also take advantage." I clenched my fists. "Contain yourself," I told myself. He deliberately provokes. "How can we talk about repentance?" I said. "Or is all this nonsense?" Kyle looked at me with a sneer. "Repentance. I publicly apologized for my intemperance at the party. What more do you need? And by the way, haven't your people been trying to dig up my past lately? I heard that some lawyer was helping you. Maybe, and know that if I want, I will find evidence that you systematically break other people's families. I'm not alone, by the way. I think sooner or later everything will come out." Kyle chuckled. "Well, good luck. I didn't force your wife at gunpoint. She herself was glad of my attention, believe me. She felt very good." He tilted his head slightly forward, as if about to throw another insult at me. "What does it hurt to hear the truth?" I felt an irresistible urge to punch him in the face, but with an effort of will I restrained myself. My late father used to tell me, "Fighting is the last thing when there are no other arguments." I didn't want to become a criminal, and I already realized that this person is an unscrupulous manipulator who doesn't care about other people's feelings. My fist is unlikely to change. I took a step back. I realized that it is useless to talk to you about conscience. But your finest hour does not last forever. Your problems are already knocking on the door, along with the Heisen and Company scandal and other stories. "I have everything covered," Kyle answered smugly. "These small problems only add to my popularity. I advise you to give up your pathetic attempts. Otherwise, your life will become even worse." I realized that I had nothing to lose. Silently, he turned around and walked towards the exit. I probably should have said something pathetic to him at the end, but I felt that any words would be useless. He doesn't feel any remorse for him. It's all a game where he is the winner. Well, let him enjoy the illusion of victory. Walking outside, I took a deep breath. There was a feeling of emptiness in my soul, but at the same time a certain clarity. I realized that fighting Kyle would not give me real relief. His conscience seems to have long ago atrophied. Continuing to take revenge on him means wasting your life on a person who is not worth it. It's much more important for me now to sort out my relationship with Laura, either to officially put an end to it, or to find a way to heal. Revenge won't make me happier, I admitted to myself as I got behind the wheel of the car. I sat at the dining table in an empty house and looked at the printed sheets of the non-disclosure agreement that Heisen and Company had sent me. The day turned out to be cloudy. Spring Portland did not enjoy the sun, and light rain was drizzling outside the window. There was a dull silence in the room, occasionally interrupted by the rustle of my movements. I fiddled with the corner of the paper until I tore it. How long have I been doubting? It seems like it took a lifetime to make a decision. If I sign, I will receive money and an official divorce proposal without any disputes. This means that I will leave my story with Laura behind me, and with it, any chance of Kyle being publicly exposed. My hands will be legally tied. I cannot disclose the details of their affair. I cannot create a scandal throughout the country and throw mud at Hendricks. But I will be able to use the money to change my life. Perhaps I will be able to realize my old dream to open an architectural studio, take on my own projects, and leave all these nightmares behind. "What about justice?" whispered an inner voice. Still, I wanted people to know the truth about Kyle so that he wouldn't escape responsibility so easily. But alas, one in the field is not a warrior, and my attempts to resist the star only resulted in pressure on me. Moreover, after the frauds at Heisen and Company were revealed, they themselves were busy saving their reputation. Perhaps time itself will put everything in its place. I'm tired of taking revenge, tired of living with hatred alone. I remembered our last conversation with Emily. She advised carefully weighing the pros and cons, and it seems that I was ready to come to some kind of conclusion. Reaching for the phone, I dialed her number. "Hi, Emily," I said quietly when she answered the phone. I decided to sign the agreement. There was silence on the other end of the line for a couple of seconds, and then she sighed. "Understand, I think this is an informed decision. Do I need to have my papers ready by tomorrow morning?" "Yes, please. Send me the final version, and I will study it again." I hesitated. "You can think whatever you want about me, but I don't want to continue this fight." She eats me up from the inside. "Mark, I won't judge you," Emily spoke softly. "This is your life, and if you need a new starting point, money will help you start over." And about Kyle. Sometimes fate itself deals with such people. I thanked her for her understanding and hung up. After sitting a little longer in silence, I signed the last pages, entering the date. All that remains is to transfer everything to the agency through a lawyer. It was as if a stone had been lifted from my soul, although a bitter aftertaste remained. But I felt I was making a choice to free myself from this viscous darkness without starting endless battles. The day before the papers were signed, Laura called me. Her voice sounded excited, although she tried to remain calm. "Laura, Mark, I know that we are heading towards divorce, but I wanted to meet on neutral territory and discuss everything. No scandals, no screams. Can I?" I hesitated, feeling that there was still so much pain and resentment inside. But I realized that we should probably talk through the final steps in person. After all, she must also file a divorce on her side. "Mark, fine. I suggest we meet at that cafe on the outskirts, remember? Where we once had dinner with a view of the mountains." She agreed. Along the way, I noticed that I was shaking with excitement. The final meeting with his wife, with whom he lived for 15 years, is not an ordinary episode. The cafe was located on a hill overlooking the dark green hills bathed in the gray Portland sky. We sat down at a small table by the window. The place was quiet, almost empty. The warm yellow light of the light bulbs and the smell of freshly baked bread reminded me of the comfort of home that I had not felt for a long time. Laura came in a light coat. Her hair was neatly tied up, and she looked a little tired. We ordered a cup of coffee. She was the first to break the silence. "Laura, I learned from the lawyer that you are going to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So you intend to take this money." "Mark, yes, I thought for a long time. I need to move on, and a financial cushion will allow me to do this faster. Why do I need all this noise? I don't want to fight with them." She nodded, looking upset. "Laura, I understand. I, too, of course, am not delighted with the fact that everything is bought with money, but honestly, I'm glad that you decided to save yourself and not continue to drive yourself deeper into the wounds." We both paused and took a sip of coffee. Then she spoke in a trembling voice. "Laura, Mark, I want to say something else. I know that after everything I've done, we can't continue to live together as before. But despite everything, I really love you." I looked up. Her eyes sparkled, either from emotion or from suppressed tears. "Mark, do you love it? It's hard to hear after your actions. Laura, yes, and I am aware of this. But I won't be offended if you don't believe me. I needed to say this, even though I knew we were getting a divorce. I clenched my fingers until my knuckles turned white. Somewhere in the depths of my soul, I felt a feverish mixture of melancholy and bitterness. After all, this woman had once been the closest person to me. But the facts remained facts. Mark, listen, Laura, I can't forget the betrayal. Maybe over time the pain will subside, but we can't continue the marriage. She lowered her head. Laura, understand. Mark, I don't want you to torment yourself with guilt forever, but understand me too. I also have a life, and I want to live it without constant reproaches and suspicions. No amount of therapy will give me back my former confidence that everything will be fine. For some time, we both silently looked out the window, where birds were soaring against the gray sky. Laura, I accepted everything. I've already signed the divorce agreement, she said quietly. You will receive that money, and I will not object to the division of property. The house remains yours. It is your ancestral property. I don't want to argue about this. I breathed a sigh of relief. Although she hurt me, she still acted without undue deceit. Mark, thank you for not delaying this process. We agreed that in a week we would file official divorce papers in court. A couple of formalities and everything will be completed. At the end of the meeting, when I was about to leave, Laura stood up and timidly asked, Laura, can I give you one last hug? I hesitated, but leaned towards her and awkwardly hugged her. Her smell turned out to be familiar, recalling a huge number of pleasant moments. But I was already a different person, and she probably changed too. Mark, goodbye, I whispered. Laura, goodbye, Mark. She turned around and quietly left the cafe, and I remained sitting at the table, feeling a sharp melancholy squeezing my heart. But at the same time, I realized that I felt strangely relieved. We had both ended this conversation honestly. Now I had complete freedom to start my life anew without lies, without painful memories of betrayal, at least without daily bitterness. 2 weeks have passed since our last meeting. I officially signed a non-disclosure agreement with Jason and Company, and they, in turn, transferred the promised money to me. The amount turned out to be even a little higher apparently. They rushed to appease me, given the risk of their own financial investigations. My lawyer checked all the transactions, and soon there was a truly large sum in my bank account. It was strange to feel suddenly rich. But at the same time, it gave a powerful impetus to change. The first thing I did was withdraw some of the funds and pay off the remaining mortgage on my parents' house to pay off all debts. Although the house was mine, renovations and expansions were once taken out on credit. But now there is no mortgage, no bondage. Then I thought about fulfilling my old dream, opening a small architectural studio, Devuro Design, and becoming an independent project developer. The excitement that I felt in my youth, when I was still studying, suddenly flared up in my soul. I rented a spacious office space near downtown Portland in a historic brick building. There were large windows, a lot of light, and a gorgeous view of the street. Emily helped me set up the business structure, and I hired a couple of promising architectural interns and an interior designer who had been freelancing with me for a long time. When I first walked into this studio and looked around, my heart fluttered. This is freedom, I thought. I can build, design, and create worlds to my liking. And even though not everything will be smooth right away, the main thing is that now I don't depend on large companies. I don't ask for handouts from my bosses. I became my own master. Relationships with colleagues have also changed. Many were surprised at my decision to leave the stable bureau, but I did not go into details. Sometimes he jokingly said, I was lucky with my inheritance. Few people knew that in fact this inheritance was a vile bribe for silence. Let it be so, but with her help I gained independence. Along with my career plans, I started going to therapy with a psychologist because I realized that I couldn't just erase 15 years of marriage from my memory. It was hard to talk about myself, about my emotions, but with each session I felt that the pain in me was getting less. I began to work through the feeling of betrayal, the feeling of guilt that I also carried within myself. After all, Laura was right in some ways. I did not pay enough attention to her. However, the decision to change is always a personal choice. I learned to distinguish between where my responsibility is and where it is hers. Sometimes, returning home in the evening, I noticed how the silence no longer oppresses, but gives peace. I set myself a playlist with my favorite music, made coffee in a Turkish coffee pot, and watched the evening fade outside the window. The feeling slowly grew in my soul that I had escaped the vicious circle of suffering. By midsummer, Portland was blooming with greenery, and my small studio had already begun its first projects. I hired another intern and sat with him in the evenings, discussing the drawings of a future private cottage somewhere in the suburbs. Work saved me from the remaining fragments of pain. One morning, just as I walked into the office, Emily called, sounding excited. "Emily, Mark, remember what I said about a possible investigation into Jisen and Company?" So they really got into trouble. It turned out that their leadership was involved in tax evasion and fraud with sponsorship money. It's already made the local news. I raised my eyebrows in surprise. "Mark, come on, so fast?" "Emily, so fast. It seems that one of the former employees handed over complete documentation to journalists. There is real evidence of falsification of reports." "Mark, what about Kyle?" "Emily, here's the funny thing. According to rumors, Kyle was preparing to leave Heisen and Company and move to another agent. But now the new agent also had questions about his reputation. After all, he was directly associated with the previous agency. In addition, there are rumors that Kyle received a court summons for violating a contract with one of the hotels where he was supposed to perform a show, but did not fulfill his obligations." I felt a strange satisfaction. "Mark, it turns out that life itself put him in his place." "Emily, it looks like it. He and Jisen and Company definitely have no time for you right now. I think that those millions that were paid to you are not the last of their expenses for covering their own tails." I smiled, looking out the window where the sun was shining brightly. "Mark, well, that's fine with me. Thanks for the news." We talked a little more, and then I hung up. I felt relief pouring inside. It's not that I needed global punishment for Kyle. I was just glad that arrogance and deceit do not remain without consequences. And I had no hand in this. Everything happened by itself, according to the laws of justice, or, if you like, by pure coincidence. But the result is obvious. Kyle will not get away with it. And this time I will live my life and not waste a minute on revenge. That same day, in the evening, I went to my favorite bar, where I had recently poured whiskey on my grief, but now I felt at ease. I ordered myself a glass of gin and tonic, took a sip, and took out my phone to scroll through the news. And sure enough, the feed was full of articles about corruption at Heisen and Company. Kyle has already been mentioned in the context of one of the agency's star representatives. His much-hyped cooking show was on temporary hiatus. Yes, the star will have to slow down. Smiling, I closed the tape and leaned back in my chair. Longtime acquaintance bartender John, noticing the change in my mood, asked, "John, good news." "Mark, yes, life is getting better." I asked to play some calm music in the bar. When a light blues melody started playing, I felt that for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to scream or go on a binge. I was just enjoying the moment. A year has passed since I found out about Laura's betrayal. Sometimes it seemed to me that these had been long, painful months, and sometimes it seemed as if everything had passed in an instant. During this year, my life has really changed. I built the foundation for my own studio, took part in interesting projects. I discovered an inner resource within myself that I didn't know about. The divorce from Laura went without complications. We signed all the papers, divided the current accounts, and she went free. For some time, we stopped communicating completely. I only heard that she got a job at a small agency that organizes charity evenings. They say she now earns less than before, but feels morally better. To be honest, I was happy for her. Her action did not justify her, but I no longer wished her harm. As for Kyle, news about him periodically surfaced in the media. Either he canceled a tour, or he lost a major contract with a new television company. They whispered that his stardom was tarnished not only by the scandal, but also by the lack of real culinary breakthroughs. And then the mention of him almost disappeared. There were too many ambitious chefs who replaced him. This is how it happens in the industry. One idol replaces another. I no longer spent energy following his career. I just realized one day that he had ceased to be a figure of hatred for me. Fate really did its job. And here, a year later, I stood on the threshold of my new office in downtown Portland. It was still lightly raining outside, but inside me there was a quiet confidence that life would go on. Today, the Devuro Design team and I have a mini presentation of our first fully realized project, a country house on the river bank. The clients were delighted, and we were going to open champagne in honor of this success. Before entering the office, I paused for a moment at the glass door, looking at my reflection. I saw a man who had lost a little weight, but was strong, tired, but collected. I noticed that in my gaze there was no longer the pain that poisoned me before. Emily passed by and came in today to congratulate us as a friend. When she saw me, she smiled. Emily, well, boss, shall we celebrate? You are the hero of the day today. Mark, the hero is you too. Thank you for everything. She waved her hand, saying, nothing, and I suddenly felt a feeling of gratitude to all the people who supported me during this difficult year. Maybe we all learn sooner or later that you can fall in different ways, but you have to get up with dignity. Over the past months, I have tried to go on dates several times, but so far no serious relationships have developed. And I didn't want to rush. I loved my new independence. I understood. If I ever meet a woman with whom I want to connect my life, I will be much more attentive to what we are building together. And maybe I won't be as naive as I was before. When my colleagues and friends entered the office, I took off my coat and hung it on the hanger. The noise of a lively conversation was heard in the room. There were glasses on the table and champagne was sparkling. One of my interns, Tim, said loudly, Tim, guys, I want to make a toast. Here's to Mark, the man who gave us a chance to implement cool ideas. We believe in his architectural talent and look forward to even greater victories. Everyone clapped, and I, embarrassed, raised my glass. Mark, thanks Tim and everyone else. Our studio became a reality thanks to each of you. I hope we can bring many more projects to life. Well, what a new beginning. We clinked glasses. I took a small sip of champagne, feeling the pleasant bitterness and sweetness mixed in my mouth. It was drizzling outside the window, but the sun was already breaking through, playing with reflections on the wet asphalt. At that moment, I realized I had reached a new horizon. Yes, it was a difficult year, a painful breakup, a collapse of illusions, but all this was left behind. Now I look to the future with quiet calm. I don't know where the path will ultimately lead me, but one thing is certain. I am not the same broken person I was when I discovered the betrayal, and I won't let anyone ruin my life again. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.